Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on this good evening. Here it's warm in Belgium, but thank you for joining us. I'm going to talk to you about monitoring or finding out what's going on in your Power BI environment. My name is Ásgeir Gunnarsson. I own a single-person consultancy called North Insights, which is based in Denmark, although I live in Iceland. I'm a data platform MVP. I've been working in this, in the BI sphere for over 10 years, a lot of years. I lead the Icelandic PASS user group and the Icelandic Power BI user group, although I will be moving to Denmark at some point, and then I will hand them over to someone else. But we have a pretty thriving user group here in Iceland as well. There is some connection information on the first slide: my LinkedIn, my Twitter, and my Facebook account. If you want to get in touch, please do, especially on Twitter. It's very easy to get a hold of me there, and connect on LinkedIn as well. Okay, let's jump into it. So if I can jump into it, yes, thank you. So first of all, the agenda. I'm gonna just tell you briefly why I'm talking about this, and I'm gonna talk about the objectives for our session. Then I'm gonna go through the different things that I think are important when it comes to monitoring, governance settings, artifact inventory activities, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how to report on the data that you get out of it. So let's start. So why am I talking about this topic? Why is this important topic to talk about? I became a Power BI admin when I used to work for a company, not as a consultant, but just as an employee. And I became a Power BI admin because I was the Power BI person. I knew how to use. I was the best at Power BI. And I think a lot of people that are Power BI admins have a similar story to tell. They are, what do I call them, accidental admins. They are not, necessarily experienced administrators. They just, are good at Power BI. And when you're a Power BI admin, you're going to be asked to do, okay, what is going on in the environment? What's happening? Who is using what? Why should I, use money on Power BI? And the information is not really available. It's not very easy to get it, because Power BI wasn't built as as an enterprise tool. And even though it's not nice to get, it doesn't mean that you don't have to do it. You will have to go and get this information because there's a lot of good reasons why you should be doing it. You need the information for stakeholders. You need to, we might have a governance, process in place, or hopefully you have a governance process in place, and you need to get those information. So I had those, challenges in my work. I needed to get the information. It was not very easy to get, so I decided to figure out how to get it. And since then, it has evolved, and I have tried to maintain my knowledge on this, and I try to tell other people to do the same. Because I think it's a very, very important, part of running an environment is monitoring it. So the objectives of today are, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why you should be monitoring Power BI. Then I'm going to talk about what you should monitor in Power BI, and it's not maybe as obvious as it sounds like. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can monitor it. I'm gonna, in the end, show you a little bit about automation of that monitoring. I'm gonna show you at least how I have done it, and then you maybe get inspiration of how you can do it. And then I'm gonna show you a report that I have, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about why it makes sense to report on it, and and go from there. So let's dive into it. So monitoring is a big part of governance, and when I talk about governance, I normally have 4 pillars in my governance model. There are processes, there is some training, there is monitoring, and there's roles. This session is just about the monitoring part. That doesn't mean that this is the most important part of the Power BI governance, but it's just one of the parts, and I think it's deserves its own session and its own thought process. So we're going to dive into the monitoring part. So I'm going to just shortly, I'm not going to show you anything. I'm just going to talk about it. If you have Power BI report server, then you are very in luck when it comes to monitoring. It's very simple. It's very accessible. It's simply one table, or you should use the view in the report server. It's called execution log 3. You just go on, you query that. There's a lot of information online, and there's yeah, it's not perfect, but it has a lot of the information that you need. Now there is some of the, because the documentation online is mostly focused on SQL Server reporting services. So there are some things that are in the view when you have Power BI report server that are not, documented well, or they don't show information. For example, one of the most fantastic thing about monitoring reporting services is that you can see how much time did it take to get the data, how much time did it take to render, and all these different things. And you cannot see that for Power BI reports. But they don't know. This is what you have, and it's very simple. It's on one place, so there's nothing really to say about that. If you're interested in it, there are still plenty of information where people have written about it. But because it's so simple, I'm just gonna leave that out of the equation and talk about the Power BI service or Power BI Online. So let's talk about monitoring. It's a big part of governance, because if you cannot tell, who is using your service, how much, how many reports do you have, who is building, who is doing what, it is very, very hard to say that you have a proper governance process. So you need to do it, and I go to customers all the time, and a lot of them don't have any governance when it comes to Power BI, because it's a self-service tool in many ways. Then they just simply think that well, we don't need to govern it. People can do so what they want, but it's still your data, and you need to govern it, and it's better to start earlier than later. So you should think of monitoring as a big part of that. And one other thing you should think about when you're doing monitoring is that you should automate as much as you can. It's not like that you can automate everything. Unfortunately, you cannot. This is a very typical thing with when you have software as a service or platform as a service, is that you're not able to automate everything, because you can only do whatever the service provider allows you to do. And in this case, Microsoft has some things you can monitor, something you cannot monitor automatically, and some things you can get easier than others. There are basically 3 parts of it that I'm going to cover. Well, I'm going to cover 4 parts, but it's basically 3 that are most important. It's creating a artifact inventory, and you can do that by using the Power BI REST API. It's getting the audit log or the activity log. It has changed name a little bit in the last few months, to get information about what's going on, who is doing what, and then reporting on the results. Besides that, I'm going to touch a little bit on capacity monitoring, and I'm going to like say talk about automation. So yeah, sorry, here it is. I'm going to do these 4 sections. So first of all, I'm going to do the Power BI admin settings, and this is a manual process, completely manual. Although you can do some of it. With automation, you can get some of it from the activity log, but it doesn't give you the full picture. I'm going to show you how you should be and can do an artifact inventory. I'm going to talk about the Power BI activities and then the capacities. Okay, let's do the first one first. So why would you want to do this? There are several reasons why you want to collect this data on all these different sections of data. You want to get better insights into what's going on in the environment. And this can be for internal purposes, it can be for external, or it can be simply because you as a platform owner want to know it. And one of the things you want to get a little bit better insight into, or most of the time at least, is how your adoption is going and how the implementation is going. Because in many cases, many customers I go to, they just start implementing Power BI, and Power BI simply goes off, and they have no idea how much, how many people are using it. They don't know what's being created, because even though you're a Power BI administrator, you cannot just go in and see all the content. It's just not visible, because if it would be visible in the Power BI administration portal, you would be overwhelmed with information. So I say you should definitely collect this data just to be able to justify the implementation, to secure more funding, and just to show how much, how many people are using it and how much they are using it. And it's also be on the other, on the other side of the coin, is that you want to see what is not being used, who is not using Power BI. So you can also look at it from that perspective. I did a project once for a customer where they wanted to know, how many people were using Power BI in a certain department because they had implemented it for them and they thought that, oh, this is going really good. They say it's going really good, but they had a feeling it wasn't going really good. But nobody knew. So we just created, got it back, and yes, it was actually going pretty good. But the feeling was there, and then we just put that to bed. Another part is, of course, is governance. You want to be able to say that who accessed what at what time, who deleted something, all these different questions. It is very, very important that you answer those and you're able to answer them. So you should be able to use the data for that, and you should also be able to use the data for license maintenance. So one of the big things that I have been doing with over the last few years with Power BI and the audit log is to figure out who has trial licenses for Power BI, because if you enable Power BI in your organization, people can go in and they can opt in for a trial, 60-day trial, well, 30 days, I think now, or 30 or 60, I can't remember, doesn't matter. But if you opt in for a trial, nobody gets notified or anything like that. So you just see that, you will see it in Office 365 in the admin there that someone has a trial license, but otherwise than that, you don't know. So what I often want to do with this data as well is just figure out who has opted in for a trial and make sure that you give them a license if they need one before the trial expires, so you don't have to have that period of, they cannot do anything. So that's pretty much a little bit about, the application of it. There's, of course, with the capacities, you can also do the use the monitoring for performance tuning and performance, monitoring. So the first part of this is the admin portal settings. If you are a Power BI admin, you can go into the Power BI admin portal. There you have few settings, well, quite a bit actually, which is always increasing. One of the big ones is the tenant settings. And in it, there are settings that you should modify. So if you haven't, you are the Power BI admin and you haven't done it, you should take a look at things like publish to web, turn on the audit logs, maybe look at things like how can you export to people outside your company? Can you push app to end users? There are all kind of different things that you probably should be looking at. And one of the reasons why I say that you should be, this is something you should be looking at, is that these are very important settings, and if you don't look at them, you won't be able to know what is going on there. So let me just pop over to Power BI and show you a little bit the admin portal and what I'm talking about. So if I go to the admin portal, I am a Power BI admin here, of course. That's why I can go to the admin portal and I can see all this. If you are not a Power BI admin and you go to the admin portal, you will simply see a couple of banners here, and they are not going to be showing you really anything. So there are a few things here that I think you should look at. First of all is the tenant settings. You can go and change these things here. And one of the big problems with this is that if I do a change here, any change, it is going to be logged in the audit log, but it is only going to be logged in a way that it says Ásgeir made a change where he changed the value to this. So it's not going to say what I changed it from. And this, of course, makes it that if you have more than one administrator, you might be in a situation where people have gone in and changed something here, and you're not sure what it was supposed to be. So my recommendation to you, if you are a Power BI administrator or responsible for governance or anything like that, is that you go in here together with the administrators and you go and set all the settings correctly. So there are a lot of them here. Some of them, like say, very, very important. Others maybe a little less important. But you set them all to the right settings and you document it completely. Each and every setting, you document them. When you have documented each and every setting here, you can very easily say that if something changes, I can see what that should be. And then you can monitor the audit log, or you can go manually in here and go and check it out, and then you can make sure that things are not changed to anything that it shouldn't be. As I said, there are a few things that you should be looking at. Publish to web, of course, is one of them. Share with external users. There's all these different things that you should be looking at. One of the most overlooked thing in here, which I really like, is the get help information here. So you can turn this on, and then you can do all kind of internal URLs where people can then get information about documentation and license request, or everything which is internal instead of being external to a Power BI site. Besides those tenant settings, there's also embed codes that you should be looking at. If there are embed code here, you should be sure that they are supposed to be able to be seen by outsiders. You can do all kind of different settings. I'm not going to go through them all. I just want to emphasize that this is something that you should be monitoring, even though it's not very obvious that you should be doing that. Okay, that was the first part. So monitor this, write it down, and then make sure that you know what it's supposed to be. The next thing I want to talk about is an artifact inventory. And this is probably one of the things that many people are looking into, but not a lot of people have implemented. It's simply querying the Power BI REST API to figure out what exists. What kind of how many workspaces do I have? What are they called? Who owns them? What reports do exist? What dashboards, data sets, data sources, gateway, data flows, all these different things. What do I have? So, and you can do it, in a different ways. You can do it so that, I want to see what I own right now. That is what you get from the API. So it will just tell you, these are the workspaces, these are the reports, and so forth. If you decide to collect it, you can then, instead of just querying it how it is now, you can query it and put it into a database or a file or whatever you want. And then you can, see what has changed over time as well. So I have 10 workspaces today. How many did I have yesterday or the day before? And how many reports do I have? What kind of activities are going on in there as well? So even though this is not strictly like a governance driven, this is a very good way to document what you have. And there are a couple of reasons why you should be doing that. So first of all, you just want to know how your implementation is going. So if you have no increase in workspaces or reports or dashboards, there is no activity, then maybe your implementation is not really well. If it's going up very fast, you might want to say, okay, do we have capacity for all this? Do we have can we manage this? And I have also used this information to justify budget increase, because there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of people using it. We want to get some more budget for Power BI. The way you go on about get this is by querying the Power BI REST API. The Power BI REST API has a pretty good documentation. And, if you just Google Power BI REST API, or you go to this URL here, you will get the documentation of the REST API, and it has a different sections here. So you should notice that there are some things that are multiple times. So first of all, it has an admin section. And then it has, different sections for different, artifacts in most cases. So but the admin part will have some of the things that the other one have as well. So for example, I can go in the admin part and get, let's see, sorry about this. Where am I can get groups as admin. So I can get all the groups, and in groups in this case, they are workspaces, because they used to be, the type 1 workspace, or the V1, or the old part, or I don't know what you call them. They were Office 365 groups, while the new workspaces are, modern workspaces. They are properly workspaces, but the API has retained the name, so it's called get groups as admin. But underneath the groups, you will also get, get groups. And the difference between those is that, the get groups here will only get the groups that you have access to. So you are actually a part of. So someone has put you as a user in them. While the admin part allows you, if you are a Power BI admin, to get all the different, workspaces and groups in your company. And this is the same things, they also under the admin, you will have data sets, and you will have different things that are, in its own as well. But you want to focus on the admin part if you want to get the whole organization basically. Now there are things that are not in the admin part which are only outside of that. For example, the apps here. The apps will only come from here, and there's nothing in the admin. And you need to consider if that's good enough for you to get all the apps that you can see, or if you can only get the apps that are you need to maybe look through different users and something like that. When you want to use one of these API endpoints, you can simply click on it, and you will get the description for it. You will get how to use it, what it will return, all these different things. These are web APIs, so they will return a JSON document. Then you would need to parse it. Now, luckily, Microsoft has done us some favors. They have taken many of these endpoints, these API endpoints, and they have encapsulated them into PowerShell commandlets. So we can get a lot of this done using PowerShell commandlets. That we don't need to think about how what to ask for or how to ask for it. We simply call the commandlet, and it's going to have some parameters, but it's going to be much easier than to call the API directly. If you prefer to call the API directly, you can still do that. And Microsoft have also been really nice to us. They have actually written a special commandlet that will allow you to call the API directly, because they haven't managed to encapsulate all these different endpoints. They have decided to allow us to help us to call them. The reason I think why they do is that a lot of us don't want to build a web application or something, or some program to call these APIs. We don't want to do something that we are used to or something that we are a little bit familiar with. And PowerShell, a lot of people are familiar with PowerShell at least a little bit, and they can at least figure out how to work it without a lot of help, and they don't need to build a program for it. So that's why, for me, I often use PowerShell. Now let's just take a look a little bit at how it works. So I'm just gonna put over here a PowerShell window. This is a PowerShell core, and I'm gonna just show you a little bit how it works. So first, I'm gonna begin with a PowerShell command, and this is the one I just showed you before. The one that was called, let me just go over to it again. This one here, which is called, this is update. This one, sorry. This one here is called get groups as admin. So this gets me all the workspaces. This one has been encapsulated into a commandlet from Microsoft. By Microsoft did that, and it's called get Power BI workspace. It has a scope. So if I do organization, I'm going to get the whole organization. If I don't do organization, I'm just going to get the ones I have access to. So this makes it all very, very simple to call these different APIs. Now let me just show you. If I run it here, it's just gonna run through it. It's gonna show me all the all the workspaces in my demo tenant. There are quite a bit of them, but not a lot. So this is gonna be fairly simple. I'm gonna scroll a little bit. And you can see, it has, each workspace has an ID, it has a name, it has a type, and the type is workspace in this case. And if I scroll a bit down here, sorry, you will see some of them are called group, and the ones that are called group are the old ones, and the ones that are called workspaces are the new ones. So the type 1 and type 2. You will have, is it read-only, is it orphaned, is it dedicated capacity and capacity ID, and then it will have users. It's not going to show me the users here. But you can get it through the API endpoint, and it's going to say is it an admin, is it a contributor, or is it a member, and there's going to be usernames here as well. Because in this case you might have different users that have different user rights. For example, in this workspace there are 2 people who are admins, while in this one there are some admins, some contributors, some members. So this is really nice, really easy, and the really good thing about this is this will output a table. We love tables, us, BI people, us people who work with databases. It's very easy to process. It's just really nice. This outputs a table, but there's a limitation to this. Let me just go back to my description. So, for example, this one here, get groups as admin, gets you all the groups. What if I want to get all the reports that are in this particular workspace? If by using the PowerShell commandlets, I will need to write a loop where I take all my workspaces, and then for each workspace I will need to call get all the reports for them, and all this different. I will need to loop a lot from it. they added something to the some of the API endpoints, not all of them, but some of them. They added something called expand, and expand gets me all the children artifacts of a certain type. For workspaces, you can get you can get all the reports, all the data sets, all the data flows, all the Excel workbooks, and all the users in the workspace. But you cannot get that with the commandlet. That's just because the commandlet is fixed. It's something Microsoft wrote, and it will just return what it returns. If you decide then instead to go to use the endpoint directly, you can do that by using a PowerShell command called invoke Power BI REST method. Now let me just show you an example of that. I'm just going to go here, go down to the bottom. I'm going to just. So now I have here is another one. It's called invoke REST Power BI method. It has a URL parameter, and that URL is the URL to the different to the endpoint. In this case, it's called myorg/admin/groups. And if I go back here, this is exactly what what this one is called as well. So this is this particular endpoint, and then I'm gonna say I want to only show the ones that are deleted, and I want to get a top 100. So this is just this is gonna return one. It's just to show you that how it works. So if I enter that, and now it's returning me a JSON saying that well, you have 3 they are has been deleted, and these are the ones that you have. So here I can call the endpoint directly, and I can use all kind of different things that the Power BI API can use, but the REST API can use, but well, the commandlet cannot use it. So it gives you much more flexibility. You can also use it to call a particular workspace. Now let me So here I'm just filtering on a particular workspace, nothing else. Just get me one workspace, and it's just gonna give me. Oh, maybe I did something wrong there. Well, I'm not gonna chase that down. So basically, it's supposed to give you a single workspace with this ID here. I think I actually changed should have changed it. This is a little bit older code. But you can use all these different things, and you can do the expand, which I talked about before. So let me show you how that works. So if I do this one here I have exactly the same API endpoint, but now I will do an expand. So give me all the reports and all the dashboards. So I'm asking for the top 100 of all my workspaces, but I want to see for each workspace, I want to see the reports and dashboards that belong to those particular workspaces. And if I run that, I will get a little bit of difference. So this is a little bit bigger JSON here. I'm just going to go to the top because that's the easiest. So, for example, if you start up at the top, it's going to tell me it has 39, and then it's going to start. This is my first workspace. It has an ID. This is the ID of it. It's on a capacity, and then it's going to start going into well, here are all the reports that belong to this particular workspace. And then you're going to have all the dashboards that belong to this workspace, and so on and so forth. And then it's just going to give you the next one. Now, because this is a JSON output, you can have these nested, nested nodes so that you can get all of them. But of course, you will need to parse it somehow. So you need to somehow read this, JSON that comes out of it and do something with it. So you don't want to run this in PowerShell, in your computer and copy paste it to something. You want to output it to something, and I'm not gonna go through it. It's simply read about how you can output to a file. Just be aware that if you are what I've experienced in this and what I've experimented with is that if you try to output this as a CSV file, for example, which is really nice because that's a tabular format, which is really easy to consume, you will lose some of the nested things because CSV cannot work with that as well. But if you output it as a JSON file and then you can consume the JSON, then you can you will get all the information. Okay. this is what I wanted to show you about, getting, how to use the API to get some of the information from about your artifacts. As you said, you will probably want to go and go get all the groups. You want to get all the different things. You want to get reports and dashboards and data sets. And there are some instances, for example, if you want to get all the data sources for the data sets, then you might need to loop, create a loop in your PowerShell code. Also, if you want to get the refreshes, you might have to do that as well. So just to show you an example of a code, I'll just put it in in the IAC because it's easier to see the script here. So here I have a script where I'm just getting all these different getting all the apps, and for all the apps I'm going to get all the reports. So this is a very simple one that just goes in and goes through all these different things. So you might have these instances where you will have to look through, even though you will get most of it from the groups API. You will get most of the things. You will still need to get all the apps, and you will need to get all the data flows. Data flows come with, but all the data sources for each data set and the refreshes of the data sets, they need to be done in some of those loops. Okay. So I actually think this is a great time if there's any questions, Benny.
Yes, there are, let's say, two. The first one is actually a really good question from Eva. She wants to know if you have any way of getting the user principal names right next to the access rights in a workspace, because she has been having some issues with this. She can get it for the users that are directly assigned to a workspace, but not for, let's say, Active Directory groups that are assigned to the workspace. And she's looking for something like that.
No, you cannot. Unfortunately, you cannot see that. The API will just not return that. At this moment. So unfortunately, you cannot. You can only see the users that are in there. I haven't actually tried it, but if you can get the groups out, of course you can query Active Directory to get who is in the group. But I don't think it will return the group itself. Yeah.
But would you still recommend using those groups?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Always. I know it's it will, because you can always at least figure out who accessed it by using the audit log. So you will get some indication, even though you cannot get it from there.
Yeah. Then we have a question from Johannes. He wants to check whether you logged in prior to the session, because we were seeing the my.org in the site, and he manages a few different tenants. But I'm scrolling. So yeah, he wants to know how the query is being redirected, but I assume.
I did log in. Yeah. This was I simply actually this case I just logged in manually. But you can, of course, if you have if you have multiple places, you can just log in with a different user, of course. If you have a same user in multiple tenants, I'm actually not sure how that's gonna work.
It depends on which one you log into.
Have a user per tenant.
Yeah, but in PowerShell, you definitely have to log off if you want to switch users, because it's ficky about credentials, etc. Okay, so one
probably have to close the session down completely.
Yeah. One more question from Jelle. He's saying that the command get Power BI reports gives him all the reports, even the deleted ones. However, he cannot see which ones are set to delete, the state deleted. Can he use the invoke method to get all the deleted reports?
Interesting. If you get to know if they're deleted, if they're set for deletion or not.
The state deleted. Yeah.
I'm not sure of that. So I don't think so. No, I don't think the state. So you can simply go through these here and see if there's any. So there's no state returned in any of these.
Does the regular one return the state? The get Power BI report.
That is actually a possibility.
Get report, yeah. But the regular one, get report.
No. Yeah, interesting. So you're getting the states of them. So I have found that there is occasionally this the return I get is not exactly what is in here. It's just a matter of they have not been able to update the documentation.
Yeah.
But I must admit I have not tried this. And I haven't seen if there's a state anywhere. They should disappear at some point. I think it's 30 days or something like
that. James noticed, commented on it as well. It may be worth a shot to try working with a filter set to is deleted is true, but we'll have to check.
Yeah, definitely go for it. It's a little tricky when you're doing the filters, but go for it. And you're always going to get more control if you use the REST API endpoint than if you use a commandlet, because the commandlets are fixed.
Yep, exactly. All right, that's all the questions for now. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go on. So the next thing I'll talk about is the activities. And again, when you do activities, you were saying who did what when. And what I often see people use it for is just to document, to do just for governance purposes, is saying, that did who accessed this report? Well, it shouldn't access it or something like that. But you can actually use it for many more things. For example, about the adoption. But how is the rate of adoption of your implementation going? You can get how many people are using it, how often are they using it, and not necessarily down to you don't need to do that down to a single a name, but it's more of on a certain level how many people are using it and how many people are accessing certain things. It's also, of course, about just the proper governance things. Who is viewing, who is modifying and who is deleting, and then of course what. And the what is very important because I guarantee you that there's a bunch of things in your tenant that are never used, and you might want to look into cleaning it, especially if its data has as big data sets come connected to it, and it's maybe all automatic refresh, but nobody ever uses it. You might want to think about taking that out of your tenant, even though Power BI is really good at putting things into memory and taking it out, evicting it out again. It doesn't, there's no reason to have things that nobody is using. And another thing you want to do with it is get to when people are using it, getting an idea of the pattern of usage in your company. If you're a multinational company, you might have usage the whole 24 hours. But if you're not, you might have only a certain part of the day. And then, if you have Power BI Premium, you can start thinking about, doing some, maintenance or, schedule refresh on the times when people are not using it. And then, of course, for a proper auditing, you want to get, when did the person last log in? When did they, do things? Get, what data sources are they accessing and all the different things. So, getting back to it, there are two different places where you can go in and get this information. So the Power BI activities, they are stored in one single place, and that place is the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center. And if you're if you are a Power BI admin, you can go to the audit logs here and you can turn it on. It's turned on, sorry, in the tenant settings. And you can go to the audit logs here and you can go to the Office 365 Admin Center. If you want to be able to do this, you need to be either a Office 365 admin or you need to be have the auditor role in Office 365. The problem with this is that you can either see all the logs or none of the logs. So if you go on and get access to this, you can also see SharePoint logs, file logs, Skype logs, and all these different things that maybe you're not supposed to see. And because of this, Microsoft decided to make the logs also available within the the Power BI admin portal. So not physically within the portal, but by with the REST API to get the audit log out. Before I go down there, I want to talk about the parts where it's in Office 365, and I want to show you a little bit how it works, what is in there. And then I'm going to talk about the differences. So I have clicked this one here. I'm over here into the audit log. It has a thing, it's a search here. So here I am searching. I have only searched the Power BI, so I have Power BI activities. But as you can see, if I scroll up, I have e-discovery, all kind of different things that are non-Power BI, and I either have access to it or I don't have access to it. There are 108 different activities that Power BI will log. These are growing all the time. I remember when I looked at this absolutely the first time, there were 31. So they are grown, quite considerably over the time. If I scroll to the bottom, the newest part is about deployment pipelines, data sensitivity labels. So all this new stuff in Power BI, that's the newest activities. I can then query a certain activity. So for example, here I have queried the updated organization of Power BI settings. So it's basically someone went into the tenant settings and they did something here. So I have that is one activity. I have searched for that. Today I changed the publish to web to false. Now this is a very simple one because publish to web has either only it has on or off, and then it has of course either its entire organization or a certain group. So this is just what I just wanted to show you this with the connection with what I talked about before, is that I will see what it was changed to, but I don't see what it was changed from. But basically I will just see that on this particular date, from this IP address, this user did this activity to this item, and this was the result. I can then export it, I can download it as a CSV file, and then I can work with it on if I want. Now, of course, I just took one event. If you have all the events, you might have a lot of information here. You might have thousands or tens of thousands of data points, and it's maybe not very effective to go in here and download this as a CSV all the time. If you don't want to download it as a CSV, you can also use the audit log API. So the Office 365 has an API which you can then connect to and download this. They also have a PowerShell commandlet that allows you to do this. Now, as I said before, then they have also made it available from the.
Ásgeir, sorry to bother you. Can you? There's some people saying that they're not seeing your screen, but we can see it fine. Can you disable screen sharing and then re-enable it again?
I can do that. Yes.
Teams.
Let's see if that becomes better.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. So as I said, so Microsoft, because of this limitation of you have to be Office 365 global admin or auditor role, which a lot of people were not able to get. They decided to make some of it available within the Power BI REST API. And if I just go back to the REST API here, and underneath the admin, you will have a get activity event, which is basically an endpoint which will give you the activities. This will also give you a bunch of information about you can do all kind of filtering and time windows and all these different things. Now the difference between those two different places is that the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center will store the audit logs for 90 days. So you will see they were there for 90 days, and when 90 days are over, they will start cutting from the end, and it will simply, it's a moving window. If you want to get it for longer than 90 days, you will need to buy a bigger license and pay more money, and I think I haven't bumped into an organization that has done that. Most people find 90 days fine, because if you need more history in that, you should simply collect it. If you want to get it from the REST API from Power BI, for Power BI admins, it will only be the last 30 days. So they have taken part of it. So the last 30 days of the data that is in the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center, and they've made them available as an API. When you try to query this, you need to be very particular about how you query it. So let me just show you how we can do that. So again, Power BI has Microsoft have decided to take this and encapsulate the endpoint into a PowerShell commandlet, and then I'm just going to show you that. So this is an example of how you can call this using the commandlet. So it's get Power BI activity event. It is encapsulated. It's really nice. It's very easy to use. Now, be aware of one thing. You need to supply a start date time and an end date time, and they have to be within the same day. So you cannot go over multiple days using this. If you are starting to collect this now and you want to use the the Power BI REST API, you will need to take start 30 days ago, take that day, and then take 29 days ago and 28 days ago, and so on and so forth. And because this is the way it is, I highly recommend, if you want to do this, you should do it every single day so you don't miss out a day, and you should always take a closed full day. So taking yesterday here, for example, not take the. I'm just going to press enter. This has been pretty slow today, so hopefully this will not take too long. So this will get you the whole of yesterday. So from the midnight until 1 minute 2. And you can go and you can put milliseconds on this as well. So it doesn't have to be just the seconds. If you're afraid that someone did something in the last second of the day, you can add milliseconds 999. So it's going to be 1 millisecond to midnight. If that's an issue. You don't have to do it like this, of course, as a PowerShell commandlet. You can also do this as a invoke Power BI REST method, as I did before. It's going to work exactly the same way. You just need to supply it with a start date and an end date, and then a method to get it. And of course, this is taking a little bit too much time. It timed out once today, and then it did not time out the other time. So instead, I'm just going to show you another script. So this script here is a little bit different. This script is going against the Office 365 log. And Office 365 log, that has an ability to give you all the different ones, but it can only give you 5,000 records. So you can go and get as many of the 90 days as you want, but it can only give you 5,000 records at a time. You will find plenty of information online of how to then look through it if you want to get it. So if you are at all able to get to the Office 365 log, I would recommend that you will you take the 90 days there, and then you just use the the Power BI REST API after that. So get the help of an Office 365 admin, run it with them to just collect the first 90 days, and from then you can take it over. That's my recommendation. It timed out, of course. So let me just give you another one here. That it's just gonna take 1 hour today. So this one gives you just 1 hour today. This is the where I change the publish to web to false, and this is basically one particular event. So it has quite a bit of things in it. As I said before, when you go and get this, you need to then do something with it, both with the with the artifact inventory, or the inventory of all the things you have, and the audit log. I highly recommend that you take the data and you put it into a database, data warehouse, something, and that you just start collecting it. And start today if you can, even though you're not sure what to do with it, because you're not going to get that history back. Those 90 days or the 30 days, that's all you're going to get. You're never going to get anything more. So the sooner you start collecting this, the better. I'm going to show you a little bit later on, how I am parsing this and how I am working with it, so that you can have an idea of what you can do and cannot do. Otherwise than that, it just will look like this. And let me just, quickly show you a CSV file where I have, exported this to CSV from the Office 365 log. So you see there's not a lot of columns in there. You think oh, there's something missing, but no, there is a one column with the actual audit data, which is a JSON column. So even though you export this as a CSV, it's gonna come with a JSON column in here, which has all the meat. The rest is simply just a metadata around the call that you made. And you will get the operation here, which is what you did. But it's also going to be included in here. So this is what the meat you're gonna want to get. So this is if you go to CSV file. If you go as a JSON file, you will simply get this as a JSON to go and work with. Okay, so even though the activity log is one of the most important part of it, it is actually one of the simpler part of it, because this is just what you get. You will either use the API endpoint and get everything or just something specific. With the API endpoint, you can filter on a specific user and all these different things. But that's only for like if you are now I'm going to query it because I need to figure something out. What I'm recommending is that you collect the data and then you want to get everything. You don't want to just get something very specific. Or you can use the the commandlet, and then you just go and get data, put it into a database, and then you work with it there. So, any questions on the activity log before I continue?
Yeah, a few actually. So James wanted to know whether that you can get the information outside of the audit log, which pages of a report that have been viewed, and not just a report.
No.
Okay.
So you see, so the only place where I know you can get the pages is actually in the admin center, which is a really interesting one that you can do it there. So if you go on here and in this one here, if you create another bullshit, if you create your for your workspace, you can create one users metric and there you can get the pages. But that's really, but you cannot export it anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what we thought as well in the chat. We just wanted to check to make sure if you thought the same way about it. Then Johannes wanted to know if the REST APIs can also be used with a service principal or something like that, because he has an admin account which is protected with MFA, and it blocks automation for him.
Yeah. Yes, you can. So you can use it to service principals to get it. That is something from I think December. Even though if you have an MFA on it, you can still run it but not unattended.
Yeah.
Which is of course the point here.
Yeah. I think with some forms of logging in, depending on which one you use to log in, you can also just use an app password from Office 365, and that negates MFA as well. But it depends on what, where, and how. Yeah,
so it's basically a service principal. So it's that's the only way around the MFA.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. There's one more question, but I'll answer that in the chat myself, so you can keep going to get the content.
Okay. Let me just go back. So capacity. There is a possibility in the Power BI REST API to get information about capacities. So it's basically what capacities are there. But if you want to get anything about the capacity really and the capacity performance, then you should be using the capacity analysis app that is regularly getting a revamp, and it's getting nicer and nicer all the time. It's basically an app that you install. It's not very complex to do. You go and install the app. It's called Power BI Premium Capacity. Just go and get apps. And normally when you go and get apps in Power BI, you go into My Organization. But if you go to just apps instead, you can search for Power BI Premium Capacity Metrics app. If you go and install that, you can get a lot of good information about your premium capacity. This is where you should be, working if you want to get any information about performance. If you just want to get information about what capacities exist there, you can use the REST API to get it. And then of course you can get from the audit log, you will get information about who is if someone has been if someone changes, who is the capacity administrator, and different things about that kind of thing. You can get that from the audit log as well. Okay, so I just want to mention this because it has that extra thing, which is the capacity analysis app that I wanted to tell you to use if you are using Power BI Premium or embedded capacity in any sort. Okay, so when I was doing this, I created a solution that I thought I need to create some kind of solution that can do this. That it's not just me running a PowerShell script on my computer, outputting it out to CSV files and do something like that. So I created a solution which was based on Azure, And I did a similar solution, which was based on on-premise if you're not in Azure. In this solution, basically, the Azure one, which is on top here, the cloud one is the one I normally use. It uses the REST API and the activity log, and it uses PowerShell in a Azure function app, and then it puts these JSON files that come out of it, no matter if it's from the REST API or from the activity log. It puts the JSON files into a blob storage. Those JSON files are then picked up by Azure Data Factory to move over to Azure SQL DB, which then just normal processing, data warehouse work to get it nicely shaped and everything that you want. Now there's one caveat to this. So when I was trying to do this, I tried many different ways of doing this. So before I could run easily PowerShell on-premise that worked very well. I can just I could do it in very different ways, but when I was doing it, in the cloud, I had a little bit of a issue. But at the end, I found the Azure Function app that worked really well to run PowerShell scripts. There's nothing really to it, not a lot of not a lot to say about it otherwise than that it just works. It works pretty well. Here I have an example of one of those where I have I have a bunch of scripts here. I get scripts from I get the information about dashboards, data flows, data sets, data sources, gateways, imports, activity log, refreshes, and all the different things. And it's basically just a script which gets username and password from a key vault, and then it runs through and calls the API. But the problem I had is that when you want to consume the JSON that comes out of it, is that the JSON that comes out of it has a little. Let me just show you. I think I have one here. I can show you. Sorry about this. Open with Notepad. So this is a one that does apps and reports. So it's basically this is a report, and then it's in this particular app that I have taking the ID of the app and put it into the name of the file, and then I get all the reports that belong to it. And the problem I have when I try to parse this in Data Factory is that Data Factory does not like to have a @ symbol in this first line here. If you have that @ symbol, Azure Data Factory will not be able to parse this. If you escape that @ symbol with another one, it will. If you remove it, it will as well. So you will need to figure out what to do with that.
Ásgeir, we lost the screen.
You lost the screen?
Yep. Well, I think I did.
Okay, so you cannot see anything?
Well, no, not on my laptop, but on my desktop I can. So it's probably me.
Okay, I will do one more sharing. See
yep, now it's back. Thank you.
Okay. So you need to either escape this this @ or you need to remove it if you want to use Azure Data Factory to do it. Or you can first do it in many different places. I did also try to do parse this with the Logic app and with Power Automate. It worked a little bit better, but I had other issues there. So in the end, I decided to do the to actually remove these @ from the file after I create them. So I create the file, I export it, and then I remove the @ and then my Azure Data Factory just actually quite likes it. So this one will just put it down to put all the files into a blob storage where I've just parse them with Azure Data Factory. I put them in our archive, zip them all into our archive at some different place. Then I have a Data Factory that will just pass through them. We'll just go and get it, truncate my staging table, and this is just a classic ETL, where I'm just working with it. The only tricky part of this was to parse that JSON. But after I managed to get to taking the @ out, it was actually not very complex to parse it. And then I put it into a database. And when I have, after it is, put into a database, I will just simply point a Power BI desktop file to it, and then I will do a reporting on top of that. And that's, Power BI desktop file is actually pretty simple as well. I have few tabs in it. I have an overview tab, which will give me different things. And here, what the beauty of, having it in a data warehouse is that, first of all, I have the history. And second of all, I can now mix all the information from the audit log and from my inventory of Power BI artifacts. And what you can do with this is many things. Besides what I've told you about, just to have a nice way to document what you've done. What I have also done is that you can set up a report with which lists all the reports and all the workspaces in your organization, and you can allow people to look at that, and then they can see what exists already out there. Maybe I don't need to create something; I can go in and get it, or I can apply to get access to a particular report because this is something that fits my job profile or something that I'm interested in. Of course, in my case here, I'm looking at just my little small demo tenant. So that's why there's not a lot of users or active reports or anything. But I have an overview. I have user activity. So this is basically from the activity log. I have information about the users themselves. This is from Active Directory, and then information about what they have been doing. So I can have a particular user. I can go and filter on them and see if they've done anything. So not a lot of my users have been doing stuff, because it's all demo users. So I can see that this person he created data sets and imported. And import in this case is published from Power BI Desktop. That's a REST API endpoint. It's called import as well. I have information about reports, dashboards, dataset refreshes, which is really good. This can come really handy. Of course, I have very small amount of the refreshes on my computer. On my small tenant. But what you can do with this is that you can go and see how long does it take, and so how long does it take for different times of day. So you can see that one particular data set. This one here. It does there's a difference if it's refreshed at 8 a.m. or at 2 p.m. So you can go on and see 3 p.m. Sorry. So you can go on and see that it's a little bit faster. And if you have data sets that are refreshed multiple times a day, you might be able to say that you should move this refresh to another part of the day because there's a lot of people refreshing at the same time, and yours is suffering because of it. So that's you can get a lot of good information from here to help your users. Datasets, workspaces, and data flows and imports. This is basically the same thing again and again. It's just basically how many workspaces do you have? What are the biggest ones? How are they used? So workspace called personal workspaces are used a lot. My workspace for myself, and then different workspaces are used quite a bit as well. And you can see different types of workspaces. I have 6 workspaces that are still in the old setup, and you might want to take them and improve them. I also have the users tab. I forgot to mention before. I have all the users that are opted in for a trial within the last 60 days. So they should be handed a license if you want them to continue to use Power BI. Okay, so that was pretty much my last thing. I have hopefully fulfilled the objectives of why you should monitor Power BI, what you should monitor, how you can do it, and how you can report on data. The report part is, of course, very individual. There's a lot of information in there and a lot of options to do it. I have some links in my slides, which I will send to Benny. I also have some codes in here, so you can go on and try it out if you want. Okay.
Yep.
Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, there's a few more. So if I wanted to know that you have an activity report that you can make for workspaces, is there any way to know which users have viewed reports inside an app? Because for her, it's mostly just unnamed users popping up for the app views. Yeah,
what you can do is that, you cannot see if they were used as a part of an app, but you can see if they were accessed or not, and what app they belong to. So then you would do something similar as I did here. Is that you in this one here in particular? So I have gotten all the apps all the reports that belong to a particular app. I have actually the ID of the app in the name of the file, and I parse all this in together. So now I have a link from an app to a report, and then I have an activity on the report. But of course, you won't be able to see if they were accessed as a part of the app or just in the workspace.
Yeah, normally people that access the app should not be accessing the workspace if you set them up properly, or maybe just one for testing purposes or something. But for general usage, I don't think that should be too big of an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question. Gustavo wanted to know, let's say that he has multiple tenants, totally different companies. What would you recommend to still have that central monitoring solution? Yeah,
so if you have more than one tenant, different companies, I would have same kind of monitoring, but I would separate the data. Unless you need to look at it together, but I would have a different SQL DB or schemas or whatever depending on your budget for each one of them. But you can still have exactly the same and if you want to host, of course, the all the infrastructure about collecting the data, you can do that, but just keep the data separate. That's my advice.
Yeah. Okay. There's been some great interaction going in the chat, by the way, so you should definitely scroll through in a minute. Just one closing question from Nathan. How long does it take you on average to get this solution up and running?
So now I have, of course, built it, so it's pretty fast. It's probably a day's work to get it running because you need to set up some key vault, and you need to set up the scripts and all that, and a monitor in the data factory. So it's probably around the day, but it's because I have all the scripts ready and everything.
Yeah. Okay.